I often use a double thread when I'm making long and short soft shading. This is because I like to make a really thick covering round the edge of a shape and then to make the fine details with a very fine single thread. So I've threaded up with double thread, cast on, and now here we go. This is an area, a very simple shape. It's rather like a petal that you might see on anything else, and this same method is used for everything. The first stitch divides the area in half. So you come up at the base of a blue line I've marked here and divide the area in half with that first stitch. The second stitch is a little shorter. I often think it should be called long and 3/4 rather than long and short. So the second stitch is about 3/4 of the length, and I'm going down, you'll notice, just over the outside edge of the marked line. Third stitch is long, so you're alternating long and 3/4 stitches. Now I'm working hand to hand, and I'm keeping my needle at 90 degrees to the linen all the time. If you scoop from the side, you're fighting the natural weave of the linen, and this very heavyweight linen needs a very sharp and rather fat needle. So this is a metric size 1 crewel needle with a specially made point. Now as you go towards the edge of the shape, this turns into a satin stitch, because obviously this part of the feather would go behind the next one. In crewel work you always start with the background and work towards the foreground. Now when I get to the very edge, avoid the trap of making a very small stitch, because this looks clumsy and it'll stick out, but instead come up and go down in the same hole. Can you see this? And I'll put my thumbnail in the way, and that will just curve round naturally, and that'll fill the shape beautifully. When you've stitched half of the long and short soft shading in the first colour, you carry your thread across the back and continue with a 3/4 stitch next to that original long stitch. So then you complete the second half in exactly the same way. If you run out of thread, just finish off and cast on again in the usual way. When you've worked about an inch of long and short soft shading in the first colour, review what you've done. Have a look and see if you've made little gaps around the edge or if there are shadows between the stitches. Because what you could do is go back over with either a single or a double thread and just fill in the pieces which are looking a bit sparse. Just make sure that the edge is well covered with stitches. So I'm just popping a couple in there, and that makes all the difference before I could move on to the next colour. In the second colour, I've come up through the very first stitch, the backbone stitch of that shape, and I'm splitting the work that I've already got there. So come up through and then lay your thread down by holding it down with your finger of your non-needle hand, of your wool hand. Pop your needle down where it meets the next line or the next design and just pull it through. You can see I'm working hand to hand and keeping my needle at 90 degrees to the linen. Now the next stitch is shorter and also goes down. The third stitch is another long stitch, so every time I do a long stitch I hold it down and pop that in. Now I hope that helps you keeping the direction of your stitches